Hello, and welcome to Care Plus Live. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at about 11:30 a.m., sharing messages on mental health and wellness with the community. This week's theme is grief, and today's message is brought to you by Jennifer Velten, who's a licensed professional counselor. Jen started with Care Plus in 2014. She was interning with COPE and with Children's Mobile. Through the years, she's continued to be a part of the outpatient department and was promoted to be a part of the Bergen Trauma Treatment Center in 2018 with a new grant-funded program. Through this program, Jen has played an integral role in training students, administration, parents, and various parts of the community. We're so grateful to have Jen here today, sharing her wisdom and insights. So we'll jump right in. Jen, can you share with us, what does the Bergen Trauma Treatment Center do?
Sure, yeah, so it's really multifaceted. The goal of the Bergen Trauma Treatment Center is to make Care Plus, our clinicians, our partners, and also our community more trauma-informed. And we do this through trainings internally for our clinical staff as well as our baseline staff on things like evidence-based practices. And we really have a focus on trauma-informed supervision for our clinicians. In addition, we have partnered with our community in various ways to offer trauma-informed trainings. Some of the ways that we do that is for educators when we're invited in for their professional development hours. We've done workshops with parents and youth, as well as different community entities such as local police departments. And the last kind of leg of the grant is having a trauma advisory board, which meets quarterly, and it's composed of clinicians, community partners, and clients. And really the goal of that is to make sure that all of our endeavors within Care Plus are meeting the needs of the community, our clinicians, and all of our partners.
Awesome. And over the years, how would you say the Trauma Treatment Center has been making the Care Plus as an agency more trauma-informed?
Sure. So we've trained our clinical and non-clinical staff on everything from baseline understandings of trauma, kind of like a trauma-informed 101 type training, things like verbal de-escalation, how to create trauma-informed environments. And clinically, we've really been working on specific competencies used with our clients, such as EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's really like the gold standard of trauma clinical care. We, of course, also do trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which some people might be a little more familiar with, CBT. And the last part that we've just started to implement at Care Plus is ARC, and that stands for Attachment, Self-Regulation, and Competency. And really the goal of that is to make the entire family system, school system, aware and working on the same goals for the trauma youth.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jen. Now, I know at Care Plus, we really pride ourselves on being ahead of the curve in all of this, but for those who are watching that may not know, can you explain what you mean by trauma-informed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in our agency's work, we have partnered through this grant with NCTSN, and that stands for the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And working with them, as well as our federal government partners, we've created an understanding that trauma-informed child and family services are really ones where the parties involved recognize the impact of traumatic stress on those who have contact with the system, including the children, the caregivers, the service providers. And what does that mean? There are several tenets that it breaks down into. So a service system with the trauma-informed perspective is one which agencies, programs, and service providers, one, routinely screen for trauma exposure and related symptoms to really make sure that we're capturing everyone that would benefit from services. Two, we use evidence-based, culturally responsive assessments and treatments. Some of those things that we just mentioned, right? EMDR, ARC, different things. Three, we share our resources. We make them available to children, families, providers, schools, whomever really that wants the information. Four, we engage in efforts to strengthen the resilience and protective factors, which I'll talk a little bit later about, of the children and the families impacted. Five, we address parent and caregiver trauma and its impact on the system, because we know that it's not ever just the child, it's the whole system, and how can we help that system. Six, we emphasize continuity of care and collaboration. across systems. So we want the schools to be involved. We want community partners to be involved, whomever would be beneficial to the child-family relationship. 7, we maintain an environment of care for our staff. And this is really one of the most important, because our staff working with survivors of trauma, they can really become a container for a lot of things. And we need to make sure that we're addressing any secondary traumatic stress that they may have as a result of the great work they're doing.
Great, thanks, Jen. And so before we got the grant for the Trauma Treatment Center, CarePlus has always represented in Bergen County the Traumatic Loss Coalition as well. So can you explain what the TLC is?
Right, yeah, so the TLC, the Traumatic Loss Coalition, is an entity that's been in existence since 2000. Each county in New Jersey has one. CarePlus helps to run for Bergen County, the TLC. We focus on helping communities grieve the loss of youth or youth serving adults. So if a teacher passes, something like that, we get deployed by the youth serving entity, whether that be the school, the YMCA, kind of whatever that entity is, to come in and provide groups to help youth start that grieving process. Mm-hmm. If this were normal times, obviously we would go in person. With COVID-19, we're doing these groups virtually as well. And it's a one-time group using the psychological first aid model, PFA for those who may know, and really just focusing on building those resources, getting youth connected with services that they need. As you can imagine, most recently, this is a resource that's been deployed often, you know, in the face of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. And how would you say childhood grief ties into everything that you've mentioned? I mean, like, what does that look like, and how does that affect the development of a person?
Right, yeah. We get asked this a lot, especially when we're going out and doing those teacher professional development days. And it's such a great question because sometimes in our brains, we have a concept of what trauma may be, but in reality, trauma is different for each person, and the grieving process is different for each person. So while many children adjust well after a loss, whatever that loss may be, other children may have ongoing difficulties that interfere with their everyday life. A child may have a traumatic reaction after a death that was sudden and unexpected, maybe through violence or an accident, or a death that was anticipated, like a long-term illness, or really the loss of safety in everyday life as they know it. And I think that's a lot of what we're experiencing currently during this pandemic and having to be at home, you know, this loss of that everyday life process. So if the child's responses are severe or prolonged and they interfere with their functioning, that's when we say the child may be experiencing childhood traumatic grief. And like I said, the thing to remember with trauma is it affects all of us in different ways. You and I, Caitlin, we can both experience the same event, in this example being quarantined, and we can be impacted by it differently, dependent upon the number of protective factors that we have. When I say protective factors, I mean supportive things in our life, such as access to loved ones, financial security, experience in the past where we've overcome adversity and hardship, and we can really remember how we got through that. And also things like our coping techniques and strategies. So same event we're both going through, dependent upon those supportive factors or lack of supportive factors, we will really get through this experience in a different way and possibly be impacted traumatically.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much. This has been such great background information. And for those who have been following, you know, the last few weeks, we've touched on some different coping strategies and resilience in the face of this shared experience. So Jen, just to kind of wrap this up, what would your message be to the children and families that are affected by this right now?
Right, so twofold. The first thing is really in regards to grief, which I know is this week's message. I've already mentioned that everybody grieves differently, and that's true. So we want to be respectful of everybody's grief process. The second thing that we've been hearing a lot more of in our therapeutic work and our work with the TLC is this idea that one type of grief or loss trumps another, and that's not the case. The most important grief is the one that each individual is going through. So if you have not physically lost someone and you've only lost your sense of normalcy, That's fine. Grief is not a competition. Whatever you're grieving and struggling with is the most important grief. So that's kind of the first part of the message. The second part is reach out to us. Get help. And I know, Caitlin, that you're sharing all of those numbers and different ways to contact us. We're here for you. I know that therapy and assistance may feel different virtually versus, in the same room together, but mental health clinicians and supportive staff are here. We're available. Another thing is many of the barriers that may have traditionally kept us from seeking help, like maybe not having time to fit it into our schedules or not having access to transportation, they're not really existent right now in this telehealth world. So in some ways, it may be easier to access us. So we're available. We're here for our clients. This is your time. Let us help you. Use our services. And another thing is to work on rephrasing this time, this quarantine time. We're not socially distancing. We're physically distancing. And that's a really important difference because socially distancing implies that we can't talk to loved ones or see each other virtually or safely. And that's not the case. We have to physically distance, but socially we are still here. So we need to physically distance ourselves, but now more than ever, we need to lean into our social supports in those safe ways, things that are available to us. And remember that love, connection, and wellness have not been canceled.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jen. That's love, connection, and what was it?
Wellness.
And wellness have not been canceled. I love that. So thank you, Jen. That was a great message for everybody listening. And for those who are on the line, as always, we do have a number of contact numbers here in this post, including the contact information for our VP of School-Based Services to get the support of Care Plus in your schools, as well as the number for the TLC for Bergen County, which will connect you to Jen or Sue Hagee. And for those seeking general support at this time, our admissions phone number is also there, available Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and an activity called What's Changed? Managing Worry During COVID-19 provided via MyStrength. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment on the post or reach out. As Jen said, we are here for you and we are happy to be of service and to help. So thanks, Jen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day.